and welcome back to another Back to the Future session. So today I'm here with Bev from the MTC. So Bev, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you do and what MTC is up to?
Yeah. So I'm Bav. I am the Sector Development Manager for Agri-Food at the MTC. So I cover everything from essentially farm to fork. Focus predominantly around Agri-Tech is more around the on-farm automation, digitalization activities. However, we have been involved in all sorts of weird and wonderful projects that require some level of technology. They don't all have to be overly complicated, but they can range from picking, well, crop spraying, all the way to chickens and how do you prevent chickens being well, going through some pain, etc., before they're made into food.
Oh wow, gosh, that is a real range, isn't it?
Yeah, it really varies. I think that's one of the challenges. Yet, what makes the agri tech environment really exciting as well, because there are such a range of different activities. People need different things for different
Mm,
reasons. Yeah, again, make it's a challenge. It's exciting because it's so diverse, and it's a challenge because it is so diverse as well.
yeah, double-edged sword, isn't it?
Yeah.
I feel like that leads into my first question, which I think might be a bit of a trickier one for you.
Yeah.
So we've been asking our members what's been really game changing in the last 10 years in terms of technology, and I imagine you've seen quite a lot of different things that might be quite game changing. But tell me a bit about your thoughts over the last 10 years. What's changed?
I think there've been quite a few developments, and I think there's not even necessarily some of the technology being new, but you being used differently, I think, which
Yeah.
is also quite exciting. And I think people adopting things like GPS a bit more and helping with that precision ag side of things. I know that's been going around for ages, but actually it's the development within that technology and what
Mm.
can be done with it. But I think probably one of the big areas which is still under development are the autonomous vehicles. So ranging everything from what can you have on a field for arable farming all the way to what can you put in a polytunnel to drones, etc. as well. So I think there's quite a wide range of activity, but it's really progressed, and especially with the regulation side of things with drones, etc. I think that's really help the sector and what it can achieve.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's actually a really interesting thought. Like you say, GPS is not actually that new, but we
No,
just weren't really using it. And I guess I see the same coming through with kind of AI as well. I mean, that's been kicking about for forever, and it's only recent developments that means we can actually use it in a helpful way.
yeah, I think with AI is great if you've already got data or you're
Mm,
collecting data, and sometimes we often find it's not. This is just not with agriculture, but it spans the whole all sectors. There's a lot of people want to implement AI, but they don't have the sensors or data to generate information in the first place to then use
yeah.
the AI to build that data and make it a bit more useful for them. So I think that whole digitalization piece is it ranges across the sector and across
Mm.
other sectors as well. But yeah, have it that could really advance and change things quite dramatically.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think it's helpful to reflect that other industries sometimes have the same challenges because I think we can get a bit locked in that these are all our own challenges, but maybe not always our own challenges.
No, yeah, and it's not, yeah, and it's not limited to small companies, it's large companies as well. So yeah, people
Mm.
shouldn't feel alone in their on their technology journey.
Yeah, that's a nice phrase actually. Yeah, not feeling alone. So I think that might segue into where I'm coming next, which is, I mean, we just talked about AI sort of by accident, but what do you think might change in the next 10 years? Like, what are you really excited about? What should we be excited about?
I am excited about adoption, and I think there's a lot of work being done at the moment in terms of development of a lot of this technology. And we always say, oh, farmers will be adopting it in the next 5 years. But I honestly think that will happen within the next 10 years, and it needs to happen. I don't think there's much of a choice around it anymore. I think with all the platforms, etc., that are being developed from on autonomous side, but also some of the digital side of things, it's adopting it and then developing it further. So if you've got a basis, people can then actually go, right, because we've talked about how diverse the sector is, how can we then sort of modularize it or make it suitable for that particular crop, for example, or that particular location? And I think that will really help with the adoption side of things. Once we've got that basis in place, I think it can just sort of exponentially just grow,
Hmm.
which is exciting.
That's a really interesting sort of thought process, because you said earlier about different autonomy, but for different things like indoor or tunnels, or if you're doing it out in crops, and that's exactly what you're saying, isn't it? Much easier to develop something a little bit more specific that works in that context rather than trying to apply it to just generically all of agriculture.
Yeah, I think there do need to be some sort of foundation pieces of technology that allow
Mm.
you to then translate that. But then once you've got to that point, I think, yeah, you should be in a position that we should be able to just adopt things, because we're not in the environment at the moment, I suppose, in the next 10 years where everything's going to be like in a factory where everything's the same, everything's very regulated in terms of
Mm.
where things are. It's all in nice rows and, etc. So I think, especially in the next 10 years, things do need to fit for the environment. And maybe beyond that, after that stage, then the environment will start to change to make it easier for the automation or the other technology, for example, as well. So I think at least to get adopted in the first place, we really need to fit what exists today.
So would you say that might be something different to, perhaps, I mean, obviously you're working in different industries, manufacturing industries. Is that perhaps where agriculture is a little bit different, and perhaps we have a slightly different barrier, and that it is a very open system, and it's not very uniform, like you say?
Yeah, I think every sector has its own journey, and I suppose the automotive industry had its journey in terms of how do they adopt technology, etc. And now you'll find most of the robots actually are designed around the automotive industry, and you need to sort of manage them and implement them into your own sort of
Mm.
sector, just because that is quite a robot heavy sector. But I think barriers in terms of tech, it's not just from a technology standpoint, but there's that culture part as well. And I think that is, people want change, but also reluctant to change. People don't
Yeah.
want to spend loads of money on something that is currently risky.
Hmm.
So it's about, actually, let's de-risk everything. Let's make people feel comfortable with the technology, and then go, yeah, take it from there. I think that's why I was thinking it should just exponentially grow, because people will go,
Yeah.
oh, actually, yeah, this is great. Or my neighbours had this and this has worked for them. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, I think that's one of the key barriers at the moment. But I think,
Yeah.
yeah, de-risking is one part, which is capable with, regardless of what technology it is. It
Mm.
could be sensors, it could be collecting your data. That's another sort of, I suppose, an area that, especially when the farming industry are reluctant to kind of what happens with that data, and they're reluctant to share it. There's that aspect of it. And then, yeah, it's traditions of farming, years of traditional farming that you're then trying to change. They've always been changing to some extent, but I think this is maybe a bit too, it's a bigger step.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
something a bit different. So yeah, there's quite a few barriers. And then also, it's not just the end user end. There's the technology side, so the standards, the regulations, the safety aspect of it. There's so many things that actually still need to be developed. And I'm not saying it's not being done at the moment. It is. It's just we need to do more in that space to get it to a point where actually they become industry standards, essentially.
Yeah. I suppose that can be quite hard, isn't it? Developing that sort of regulation side and the sort of standardization without having some kind of use cases, a bit chicken and egg, isn't it? So you can't really build a whole system if you don't really know what you're building it for.
Yeah, no, agree. I think it is a chicken and egg, and then on top of that, there's the skills side of things as well. What if something breaks down? Do we have
Yeah.
people on the farm to fix things? No one can afford to have something there, especially during harvesting, that's down for like at least 3 days as a minimum. That's just yeah.
Mm.
So it's the whole ecosystem that needs to move forward, and like you said, it is a bit of a chicken and egg, but
Yeah, it is,
I think
yeah.
it all needs to be happening together to get sort of progress slowly together.
Yeah, so we'll just crack on with it, make it work, and it'll all come out in the wash, right?
Yeah, no, agree. And I think another part of it's not necessarily a barrier, but a lot of the technology at the moment has been developed in environments where they're on farm, but not necessarily. There might be well, not necessarily smaller farms, but universities and sort of technology institutes where things are
Mm.
a bit more, I want to say uniform, a bit more standardized, so it's easier. But when you've got in a farm and everything ends at a different point, you've got different angles, I think that's one of the challenges at the moment, and it's working then with the farmers for that to develop to a point where a farmer can go, yeah, it's going to work on my farm. It's not just going to stop when it's got to the end of a row and then not
Mhm.
knowing where it's going, or it's too close to a hedge and then it suddenly panics, for example, in terms of
Yeah.
autonomous vehicles. But yeah, it's just being confident.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose some of those sort of, well, let's call them demo farms, they might be a little bit more aware of how science works or how trials work and might, yeah, like be geared up for that. But actually, yeah, like you say, on farm, if you have an emergency somewhere, it doesn't matter that we need to take a sample today. You have to go and deal with whatever this other problem is going on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just business, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So I guess my final question then sort of comes around to what your vision of the future. What do you see in our future, and kind of how do you want to support that?
I think I see a lot more agri-tech adoption in general
Yeah.
on farms that exist today. Next phase, I think, like I've said, in terms of can farms change to make automation easier? Just so, for example, where you've got tabletop soft fruit growing, and some of that was to make it easier in terms of labour, not having to bend
Mm.
down, and then also from a yield and pest and disease side of things. But could that then change to make it easier for robots to go up and down, or you know whether it's a robot or a sensor just scanning up and down in a gantry? It could be anything. But there's that next change, and then I think after then will be a bigger change. So some of the areas that we're exploring are factories, but not factory farms because that has a completely the
Yeah.
wrong sort of connotations, but thinking about growing in structured environments, but like vertical farms, but vertical farms on steroids. So I would say, so if you think of a vertical farm, there's a lot of autonomy in there. It's all allows you to grow crop in a small area. You don't need a lot of land space. But then if you included other aspects of it, looking at your energy, your water, what else can you grow? Are there other sustainable crops? Can you start growing crops that rather than things like salads and tomatoes, which are great at the moment, but thinking about some of those high value crops which we
Mm.
ship across from all over the world. And I think just to make us a bit more sustainable in the future,
Mm.
having that circular economy type farming, because there's definitely a place and a need for traditional farming, but we use so much of our land already, and they do what they grow what they grow really well. It's what can we do with being so reliant on import at the moment and trying to be a bit more of a sustainable country moving towards net zero? What else can we do in this space
Mm.
that really helps develop sort of farming within the UK?
Yeah, so not displacing what we do, but perhaps
Definitely
enhancing
not.
it, and yeah, things that we can't grow outside, that kind of
Yeah,
thing. Yeah, I
exactly.
think that's really interesting. It sounds like you've got like a nice sort of a shorter term and a longer term view, which is actually a really good way to think about it. Because if we don't look long term now, we can't, you know, make the right direction.
Yeah, and I think it's important when you start thinking about technology is sometimes thinking about the longer term view and then, but how could you use that tech for today? And
Mhm.
when you develop the tech of today, how can you use that in the longer term as well? So it's just making sure things are as fluid as possible because it just makes it easier with regards to adoption. Things might need to
Yeah,
change, but at least you're thinking about it. And I think that's one of the
yeah.
key things.
I suppose it comes back to what we were talking about having a foundation that you can build more technology on. It all kind of makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I'm here for your vision. That's all I can say.
Thanks, Becky.
Unless you've got anything else to add, I think we can wrap it up there. I've not missed anything.
Happy to wrap it up.
Lovely. Well, it's been really interesting to talk to you, and yeah, I love adoption technology and how we can get more on farm. And like you say, farmers have kind of already started doing some of these things. So I think we can make it happen. Lovely. Yeah, been a pleasure to speak to you. Um,
Thank you. Oh, one thing
yeah,
actually, can I add? Sorry, I did say there was
right.
nothing, and then there's another point. In
Remember.
terms of supporting technology companies with that commercialization,
Mm,
manufacturing side of things, because once you've got past the initial, okay, this works, how do you then manufacture it, or how do you think about the scale
yeah.
up side of things? And I think maybe we've not done enough of that um, to date. And maybe it's just because the technology is not at that position yet for a lot of the cases. But yeah, I think to be commercially viable, for end user adoption, etc., that is one of the key things that does need to be
Mm.
really thought about and progressed.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. And I think that scale up space is just a massive challenge in other industries as well, as you
Yeah.
say. I've not just heard about it in agri-tech, and that's exactly it, actually. Yeah, really good point. I'll leave that one with you to solve. That might be out of
Okay.
my
Can
remit.
do that.
Lovely, fabulous. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Becky.
Lovely. I'll see you later.
Bye.